Good morning, and it's 6:15. Time for us to start to have a little natter. I'm in front of the fire at the moment, and as you can see, there's the snowman. And he's not melting. He's on a card for the Red Cross. So if you get an opportunity, buy a card with the snow. Excuse me. It's early in the morning. Buy a card with the snowman on, and you're doing a good turn. But the funny thing is, that the Snowman is written by a gentleman called Raymond Briggs, who is local. Well, he doesn't live in Lewis, but he's within Mirador country, within the area. And he's got a great fan in a local man called John Henty, who does a one-man show about Raymond Briggs and some of his books. And I say books because he's very famous for the Snowman. And it's a wonderful story. And I can remember once when I worked in Kosovo and I'd been home, I used to take back little gifts for each of my staff. And I took back a copy of The Snowman. And I distributed these gifts, and a little knock came on the door, and this lady stuck her nose in. And they're terribly polite in Kosovo. Well, they were. I think they're running into a bit of problems at the moment, like every other country in the world. But a tap on the door, and the lady came in, and she said, Keith, this is a wonderful gift, and I do enjoy the pictures and the drawings and so on. She said, but it hasn't helped my English. And of course, there is almost no text to the Snowman. It's all Raymond Briggs' wonderful, wonderful drawings. And it hadn't occurred to me that perhaps she wanted a book that would help with her English and not look at the pictures. However, after a while, she really, like all of us, appreciated the wonderful drawings that he does and the wonderful stories he creates. And, John Henty brings Raymond Briggs to the fore from time to time with his wonderful one-man show. And the funny thing is that he gets a full house on the first night, but if you want a consistent audience, Raymond Briggs doesn't seem to attract those sort of people, and it's a great pity because not only has he written or drawn, if you like, The Snowman, but When the Wind Blows is a wonderful, wonderful book all about what happens to an elderly couple in the case of a nuclear attack, and how, because of their age, they follow religiously everything they've been told to do, a nuclear attack, and of course eventually they pass away in their own home. But it's very heart-grabbing, but it's a wonderful book. And another of his books is Ethel and Ernest, which is about his mother and father and their rise throughout the 1930s from a working class background to getting their first house and car and so on. He has some wonderful, wonderful stories that are less known but equally as worthy as The Snowman. So if you can get an opportunity, to get some of those books, do so. Don't go in and look for The Snowman. Go in and look for books by Raymond Briggs. You won't be sorry. They're magnificent books, magnificent drawings. But he's also the thing that I admire most about people, and that is he's a wonderful storyteller. And storytelling is a great skill. It's a great art. It's one which we should all try to master, and many of us won't. But he has. Raymond Briggs. And if you can catch him, dear old John Henty. Lovely thing I like about Henty is he is a typical Lewis product. He's eccentric. And by the same token, a great supporter of things like the football club, and and in fact he wanted to start a bonfire museum, but by the time that he'd finished dealing with various committees, he gave that up. But Henty is a great character. If you know John Henty, you'll know what I'm talking about. And if you don't know John Henty, ask somebody to ask somebody to ask somebody, and see if you can get an introduction, because he's a great deal of fun. Believe me. Okay, now a few other things that I'd like to go on. Friday is my Jenkins Ear War Day. Now, some of you will say, aha, it's his Jenkins Ear War Day. And others will say, who the hell is Jenkins Ear's War? Or what is Jenkins Ear's War? Well, just to remind you, because actually in communication, when we're training people, there is a mantra, if you like, which says, tell them, remind them that you've told them, then remind them that you've reminded them. Because, you know, none of us really have things stick with us the first time that we're told. We need to be reminded about things. So if I keep on about Jenkins Ear War, it's so that eventually those people who are kind enough to tap in fairly regularly will be able to say, we know what Jenkins Ear War is. You don't have to tell us, Keith, but anyway, the fact is that you keep reminding us, and therefore we won't forget. You can join one of my courses sometimes if you want. Not sure that was terribly clear. However, let me remind you about Jenkins Ear War. In 1731 or 32, a British warship was coasting off the coast of the West Indies, and a Spanish customs cutter, boarded her to search for contraband. This was quite within international agreements of the time. However, somehow there seems to have a scuffle started, and the captain, Captain Jenkins, had his ear cut off. 9 years later, the British used that as an excuse to go to war against Spain. But historically, when we were taught at boys in school, and remember that I grew up, well, there was still the Boys' Own Annual was floating around. And once again, wonderful things that we suddenly start to miss in the literary sense is that the Boys' Own Annual used to have in the front cover, dedicated to the empire upon which the sun never sets. Well, those are days, I suppose we can say that about the Commonwealth now, but those are the days when we had empire, and it wasn't a dirty word. The Boys' Own Annual, once again, if you can get copies, and the 15th century bookshop in the Bottleneck quite often has copies of old Boys' Own Annuals. The stories are terrific. The whole essence of the books is terrific, as long as you don't get offended because they break so many of the mantras of modern times. They reflected the people of their day. They reflected the boys of their day, the children of their day. And they really are quite wonderful in that sense. However, back to Jenkins Ear War. We were always taught, of course, in school how wonderful Britain was. And indeed, in many ways, if you looked at it from a historical point of view and from various other points of view, it was. We were a blameless country. We were the cowboys with the white hats, and we dashed all over the world, saving other people from doom, gloom, and disaster. So we were told that Jenkins' ear was an issue that Britain went to war for as to look after the individual, not the state. A marvellous turning point where instead of just making broad decisions about the country and indeed the elite and trade and so on and so forth, we actually went to war for an individual. And as boys, we all bristled with pride. Well, of course, nothing could be further from the truth. The British were looking for an excuse to go to war with Spain, and they found it with Jenkins' ear. But anyway, the reason that I call it Jenkins' Ear War Day is because it's the day I make another appeal. I make a weekly appeal to bring Anna Campbell back. And here is an opportunity for the state to work on behalf of the individual, to look after a family, to repatriate a body so that it can be treated decently, given a good burial, and can be put to rest, surrounded by family and friends. Anna Campbell went off to fight in Syria, I think it was, and she was killed by Turkish warplanes. Turkey has a responsibility under the Geneva Convention to help repatriate the body. Well, dear old Jenkins' ear, if it hadn't been true, we would have shuddered today because nobody is doing anything. Despite petitions, despite pleas, the Foreign Office has done sweet be all. And Anna, as far as we're aware, is still lying in that foreign field. Bring her back. Show that the state can care. Help Dirk Campbell and his family. Bring their 26-year-old daughter back. You may have differing views. You may be saying, tut, tut, tut. Why did she go? Well, she was a girl of principle. And he should be proud, and he is proud, that he brought her up to get stuck in where she thought that she was helping right the wrong. So bring Anna back. We need that, perhaps, to give us confidence back into our politicians, and they don't have much confidence anymore. There's a heartfelt article, I think it was in the Independent, and I'm not going to get into Brexit. Families have been torn apart, friendships shattered and so on over Brexit. Don't intend to get into Brexit as such. But this article does say the one thing that Britain was admired for by so many countries around the world, and believe me, I know this to be true because I've worked in so many countries with authoritarian regimes or regimes where the dictator has just been overthrown and democracy is trying to get a foothold, is those countries and the world, in fact, looks at Britain as being the mother of democracy. 1264 in Lewis, the mother of democracy. And that at the moment we are being anything but democratic. We are seeing an unseemly scrabble for position and power amongst almost every politician. And that leaves a gap. And let's hope that nobody takes advantage of such a mess as we see right now. We were, and we should continue to be, the mother of democracy. That, to me, is the most important thing. Anyway, let's not get too maudlin. It's Friday. And one wonderful thing that happened to me yesterday is I went along to my surgery. I've waxed lyrical about the two lady doctors that I have looking after me. One is my consultant for my Parkinson's, and the other is my GP. Well, both are gorgeous ladies, and indeed, if their husbands happen to tap into this, don't worry. It's not the old surgery stuff where I'm going to make a pass at them. On the contrary, I just admire them for their a wonderful approach, but they are both of them very good-looking chicks, if I can put it that way. Yeah, I'm 79. Oh, I will be next week. And I can say these things and I don't care. But I was engaged with my GP about the massive monumental thing, the surgery that's going to be built and so on and so forth. And, if only they would allow some of these people who are doctors, who are the professionals, to actually start explaining, instead of this mighty army of bureaucrats who never seem to get anything right, we would all feel a lot easier. She explained that although it'll be a big, massive building, each surgery will have its own little unit. So we'll still be dealing with the same people. And I feel much happier now that I know. Still would prefer the surgery around the corner, but I feel much happier now that I've been told, and I understand that I'm not going to lose my local receptionist, I'm not going to lose my local doctor, I'm not going to lose my local nurse, and it's all going to work quite well, thank you very much. But then, with a cheeky grin, she said, but I don't know why you're worried. They haven't even knocked down the buildings that are on the site where it's supposed to be built yet. And with that, her eyes went to the ceiling, and I'm sure that she feels the same about officialdom, about bureaucracy, as I do. Oh dear. Getting moving is not an option, is it? Now, I've taken a full 15 minutes this morning, and I've been trying hard to cut things down back to about 10. So I do apologise, but it's Friday, and there were one or two things that needed talking about. And finally, may I say that there is a new TV show coming on looking at people with stress. And since stress is a part of modern life, and they're apparently looking at East Sussex. Why East Sussex has got more stress people than others, I have no idea. But if you feel stressed and you want to be part of a new television show, contact the BBC. It's a BBC show, and undoubtedly what they're going to do is investigate what makes you stressful. But I saw a national poll or survey recently, which put Northern Ireland as the group of people under most stress, and it put it down to the fact that, of course, in the 70s, the 60s and the 70s, and probing into the 80s, that Northern Ireland was having great terrorist problems and unity problems, and that has bubbled over to today's generation, that they still have the highest stress level anywhere in the United Kingdom. I spent 15 years in Northern Ireland. I know exactly what they're talking about. My daughter lives there. It's become a great place to live. Don't spoil it. Get the stress levels down and tell everybody to go to hell. Border, no border, in between border. Tell them to go to hell. That's it for this morning. Can I just say customer first so I can go out laughing? Customer first. There they are. Then they look at customers first. They look at this statement and they go, chuckle, 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 chuckle. And there is a few eggs to chuck at the politicians who are mucking everything up. And there's my breakfast. Toodle pip. Lovely, bloody lovely.